coming out. It's not raining, which is a brilliant thing. It's joyful. Thank you to also for Rylands Peter Small for publishing the book, for Sophie for being the editor, and Yvonne and Jack for doing all of the PR and social media stuff. We couldn't obviously do it without you all. And thank you to Erica and her for hosting this chat at the lovely Murus, for Art's Sake Gallery. I thought we might start it, probably a good place to start it was to sort of have a chat about our relationship with art. Mine goes back for when I was in my 20s, quite some time ago, when I moved into my first sort of my first home by myself with some friends. And we were in a really sort of lovely sort of shishi part of Glebe in Sydney. And my sort of contribution to the decor was this framed print of a Norman Parkinson picture that he had taken for Vogue. And it was these 4 models standing with sort of in the New York skyline. And I loved everything about the picture, sort of the fact that it was New York, which I really wanted to go to, the sort of the models and the really amazing sort of expressions on their faces that he had managed to capture. And of course the fashion, which included this woman with an amazing little hat and a feather that sort of came out that kind of replicated the skyscraper behind it. And I didn't grow up in a house with art, and that was one of the first things that I bought, but it was a really sort of powerful kind of, sort of showed how powerful art can be and how it can make a connection with people. And that's one of the reasons I think I sort of wanted to write the book, is because art has become so much more popular now and much more democratized, and we see it on social media, we see it inside people's homes, but I think art is a little bit like fashion, that people get quite nervous about what their taste is and showing people their taste. And I wanted to sort of write the book to give people the tools to feel confident enough to kind of do it themselves. And what about you, Erica, and your relationship? But I would say that I am not an art expert, so one of the people, I interviewed quite a few art experts on the book, and one of them is Erica, who gave me lots of fantastic information. So thank you to her for all of that.
Well, yeah, I grew up with art, surrounded by art. So For Art's Sake is my parents' business, which they started before I was born. So let's just say 40-something years ago. And I grew up in a home where every wall was covered. There was art everywhere and memorabilia, framed pictures of family. So I thought that was normal. I thought that everyone lived in houses that every wall was covered in art and pictures, and I soon realised that that wasn't. And I remember quite early on going to friends' houses and kind of coming home and saying, why don't people have things on the walls? And finding that really strange. So yeah, art was something that I was really familiar with from an early age. Exhibitions, I studied art at school and A-level, but wasn't definitely not talented enough to become an artist myself, so went off to have a career in fashion. And I think my personal journey with art was it was always a passion, and I started buying art myself when I had my first flat. And as my wall space grew and my budget grew, then my art collection grew. And I think what I started to realise in my late 20s and 30s was that I took for granted my confidence in buying art, and that how I trusted my gut reaction and how the feelings I felt for art, it was just innate in me, and I didn't realise how difficult it was for other people to look for art, to buy art, to start a collection. So through conversations with friends over the years, as friends started to buy their own homes and look for art, friends were really confident in fashion and interior design, and they would really struggle with knowing how to look for art, and would ask for advice, and I would help them. And I think it came to a certain point in my fashion career that I was 18 years in and ready for a change, that I realised that I wanted to combine my love of art and my retail and kind of commercial acumen with helping people buy art. So really my journey kind of went full circle from my family, when I was young, went off and found my own way, and then came back to art for my career as well. So that's how Murus was born, with my business partner Rose, really to demystify it and to kind of break down the barriers, show people how art looks in their home, bring lifestyle to the forefront, and really help people understand what they liked and what would look good in their home. So yeah, it's been a big part of my life and continues to be so.
The book is kind of divided into sort of first of all kind of explaining all the jargon and all that kind of stuff, and sort of what is art, and the difference between limited edition prints and posters and things like that. But I think one of the big questions we're always asked, and Erica is asked about when we chat about it, is like, how do you start a collection? And I think for a lot of people that's quite daunting, and they're not quite sort of sure how to go about it. And a lot of the time we sort of say, buy what you love, and I think that's one of the sort of things that you should always think about, because even if you're buying a picture for a wall, if you hate it and you're seeing it every day, it can be really irritating. So I think you don't sort of necessarily follow trends and things like that. It's kind of go for what you like. But the other thing to say is art doesn't have to be like an original that you've seen or a limited edition print. It can be almost anything these days. One of my favourite houses in the book is by a jewellery designer, and she took an old book that was falling apart, that was a much loved book, but I think it had been looked at so many times that all the pages were coming out. And she slit the pages and took them and then framed them and put them up in a sort of a graphic way. And she did that with a couple of books, and it looks really amazing. And it was just like pages of a book that have now become art on her walls. And instead of sort of just putting it into sort of storage and never seeing the book again, she's now seeing the book in a different way. And I think that's a kind of a really sort of sums up kind of what this book is about, which is sort of explaining, telling people that art can be anything that you love, and to sort of put it on your walls. But I think we've talked a lot about the fact that when people say buy what you love, I think a lot of people aren't really sure what their taste is, and sort of what do they love. I think if you buy a Prada handbag or you buy a Picasso, because it's such a big name, it kind of validates your choice, and people will go, oh, yes, you've got a Picasso, that's lovely. But if you're buying something that no one is from an artist that no one has heard of, or it's similarly in fashion that you're putting on a vintage outfit and you'll be judged for it, I think a lot of people get really nervous. And so I think one of the things with buying art is to sort of feel that you have the confidence in your taste and in what you love, and not worry about what other people will think. But I think one of the important things is to try and work out, well, what do you love, and how do you figure out amongst everything that's around you that the sorts of things that you were drawn to. I think Erica, you have some really good advice on that.
Yeah, I think starting with the point of what do I love, and that can be intimidating in itself, just thinking that when you don't know. So I think the thing is to really take your time and to research, and there's so many places to visit, and I would really suggest visiting galleries, looking online. Social media is an amazing place to search out art and to get ideas, and take your time to figure out how things make you feel, because I think that's something that people underestimate. Really, is actually about the feeling that something promotes in you. So you might be someone that gets a lot out of something that's a landscape or a seascape that's quite calming, and you might enjoy that feeling, it makes you feel serene, that's something that you want to enjoy in your home. Or you might really enjoy art that is bright, and the colour in the artwork might give you energy and might lift your spirits. So taking your time to really research and understand how you feel about things will help you understand what you'd like to live with in your home. And like Rachel says, I definitely strongly advise not to follow trends in art, and I say that after 18 years in fashion, so it's the complete opposite. It's so personal, and you're living with it every day, and you're looking at it and you want to enjoy it, and there's just really no point in having something on your walls that doesn't bring you joy and is a fad, on something that you may look to replace in a couple of years' time. Really, go trust your gut. I mean, that's hard in itself, but learn to trust your gut, and yeah, really don't rush it. I think is the biggest thing by thinking about what you love and learning how it makes you feel. Just don't rush that decision either. It doesn't have to happen overnight.
I think a lot of people, when they're buying art, are buying art for a particular room. So I think there are two ways. You'll be on holiday and you'll see a picture that you really love and you'll buy it, and then you'll bring it home and think about where it needs to go. Or you're moving into a house and you have a wall there and you want to put a piece of art up, and it's kind of like, well, what kind of art belongs there? And I think one of the things that is really important to think about and is the mood of the room, because your pieces of art can really make that room and give it the mood that you want it to be, whether it's relaxing or whether you want a little bit more energy. When we were chatting, Erica was telling me about a lady who put a picture of Big Ben on her wall, and how it kind of changed. Well, it was the wrong piece, wasn't it?
I think atmosphere and mood of a room is something that isn't so tangible but becomes very obvious. And I went to do a home visit with a client recently, and I was there to help advise on art for the blank walls, but actually what happened was I ended up being drawn to the walls which already had art on them. And their main entertaining space as you walk into the house, the lovely living room, and as you walk straight in, your main focal point was a fireplace, and above the fireplace was a painting of London with Big Ben, and it was a rainy day. It was quite a dark, gloomy day, and this painting was kind of pride of place above the fireplace in a big black frame, and the frame matched the fireplace and the frame matched the piano, but the piece was dragging down the entire atmosphere of the room. And the client said to me, you know, I love this room, but something's not right. I can't figure it out. Like, this is one of my favourite rooms in the house, and I love the furniture, but there's just something's not clicking. And for me, it was, I could see it straight away that the decor was lovely, the interiors, her accessories, but instantly as you walk in, looking at that painting, it just dragged your mood and your energy down. And she was incredibly vivacious and bubbly and friendly. And I asked her, I said, have you considered what the energy of that painting is doing to the room? And that was something she really hadn't thought about or considered. And I said to her, you know, you're instantly such a warm, energetic person, and you're bringing people into your home, and this is the first thing that they see. And it's not setting the tone or reflecting you as a person and what the atmosphere you want to create in your home. And as soon as I said it, she realised, and she saw it, and we took it off the wall. And even just taking it off the wall and having a blank wall instantly kind of lifted the room in it already. So my advice to her was to go for something bolder and more colourful and more energetic as a piece that is a focal piece as people come into the room and reflects her personality and the kind of entertaining that she does. So yeah, I think that was a really good example of how it can really change the energy of the space.
I think one of the other things that kind of is linked to that is this idea of stylistic tension, which I found really interesting, sort of learning about that, which is a sort of that kind of whole movement of mixing sort of old and new and different styles, which sort of started probably around, 20 years ago. I think Ralph Lauren did it in his kind of shops, and then Jenna Lyons did it when she was in J. Crew, and that she would take sort of like a modern, they would mix old and new and sort of chandeliers with really sort of rough furniture, and so it was the difference in those styles made a room feel much more enlivened and energetic. And I think the same thing sort of can happen with art, I think, is that you can mix sort of like, if you have a really lovely modern room and you just want to add that little sort of twist, you can add a sort of like a more traditional painting in a gilt frame, or vice versa. If you have a more traditional room, just adding a sort of a modern styled art piece in a kind of a cleaner frame, just having that kind of juxtaposition of different styles makes a room feel much more, I think, exciting and more interesting to be in. We talk a lot about in the book sort of how do you sort of hang your art, and where do you hang it? And I think focal points are the obvious places, which is sort of, you know, when you walk into a room, where does your eye fall? And I think it's quite easy if you sort of have a mantelpiece, because obviously above the mantelpiece is a good place, or above a sofa, or above your bed in your bedroom as well. But then often with the sort of the open plan spaces, sort of where do you hang a piece and how do you start there? And I think that the advice would be to sort of look at your blank walls and which is the wall that you see most sort of immediately and start to sort of build from that. But I think also, as well as kind of the most obvious places like, oh, in my living room, I need to sort of have some art there are lots of other more sort of places that people don't think about hanging art.
Yeah, I think hallways are a really good place to start. I think a lot of people overlook their hallway as a bit of a thoroughfare in their home, but actually that's the perfect place for art. It's when you open the front door to yourself, it sets the tone for your home, like it set the mood for when you coming in and coming out, when you're welcoming guests. So I definitely would look to make the most of walls and hallways. If you're lucky enough to have a big hallway, then a nice big piece above a console looks great and really kind of add that energy and excitement as you come into a house. If you've got tighter space, I mean, I have a kind of narrow hallway and I've hung pieces in a row, and that really it's a welcome, and then it also takes you through into the hub of the home, and it almost acts as kind of a guide into my living room, and I really love that, and I love that it adds like my personality as soon as you come into the house. And if you're tight on space, hanging above furniture works really well, so above a sideboard or a console or a shoe cupboard or something where you're just maximising the space you have, and even leaning on that furniture. There's a lot to be said for leaning it. You don't need to put it straight on the wall, and you can kind of play around with position. The other one's bathrooms, so kind of bathrooms, WCs, maybe not necessarily always seen as like the traditional place to put art, but can be really fun, something to kind of take your gaze and to make you smile. So I'm a big fan of art in the bathroom, even tiny things above a toilet look great, but just need to be careful how you treat those if it's got moisture, so just be careful with your framing there, definitely. And then with the rise of working from home, studies probably used to be a lot more overlooked, and obviously in the last couple of years they've become more and more important to people, and I think artwork in a study, again, it's looking at the mood you want to set, and escapism can be a good one, or something that's going to remind you of your next holiday, or a great memory. So yeah, having that focal point in a study as well, I'd say, is definitely a space to think about, because it can really energize you.
I think Erica mentioned in the sort of talked about framing, and I think that's something that a lot of people don't sort of think about, and also can find quite difficult. I think it's quite, a lot of people would hop down to IKEA and buy one of those sort of black frames, but I think there's so much more thought needs to go into framing. And I think, as you can see sort of from looking around, the frame that you have in a picture has an enormous impact on it, and you can actually take away from a picture if you don't do it really well. And for the book, for art's sake, framed the same sort of seascape, really, I suppose you call it, watery landscape, in lots of different frames, and it really shows, I think, the difference that a frame makes. And in one of them, it's a really sort of decorative frame, and it doesn't look awful, but because the frame is so sort of decorative, and the painting is so, and the print, is so sort of much sort of calmer and plainer, you see the frame and you kind of miss the and you miss the painting. So I think thinking about framing is another thing that is kind of important. And if you are a little stuck and you don't really know what to do, I think then going to a framer and sort of getting advice is a good idea.
Yeah, I think something that you really want to make the most of and you want to treasure and keep, framing is really important. And seeing the frame as part of the artwork, almost like an extension. When framing doesn't work is when your eye goes straight to the frame, and you're almost distracted by the frame, and you're not seeing the artwork first. So you can be fancy and you can be decorative, but it needs to work with the artwork and flow from the artwork and kind of become one. I think a lot of the time people, they want to consider their interiors and where they're hanging things. And what's important is if you bought a piece of artwork for a room, if you frame to suit that artwork, or whatever you're framing, then it will sit well in your room, and it isn't necessary to try and match your framing to your cushions or your curtains or things like that. So really have to put the piece you're framing first, and really make the framing as one, so it works in synergy together. And yeah, that doesn't mean you can't go for it. You can definitely go for it and be fancy, but yeah, it's really important to not detract.
I mean, there is a picture, a photograph in the book of a sort of a black and white sort of modern painting, and it's been framed with a really sort of lovely gilt frame, and somehow that works.
Yeah.
I think the sort of that this brought that, it's that stylistic tension thing again, where the sort of the mix of the old and new kind of really works. But I think you can't just assume that will work all the time. I think it's sort of different pictures do different things. Are there any tips kind of for framing with sort of gallery walls, because that's lots of different frames?
Yeah, I think you can be eclectic, definitely, with your framing through gallery walls. I think it depends on your level of confidence. So if you're new to that way of hanging, if you use similar frames within, then you're probably going to find it a little bit easier to put it together, because getting your layout of a gallery wall right and then transferring it to the wall. If you're using white frames or black frames, you're probably going to help you with the synergy. But as soon as you've got more confidence with it, then eclectic frames, like you say, mixing and matching styles looks brilliant. So I think it's as your confidence grows, then definitely your framing style can grow with that, so that you're able to kind of put that together confidently.
I was asked recently whether I thought the gallery wall was dead. And you know, everyone has a gallery wall and you see them all the time now, but I think my answer would be no, because I think gallery walls are such a fantastic way of showing so much sort of a whole load of art if you've got lots of it, and also to cover a wall really easily, much more I suppose than a sort of a statement piece. You have to think really quite carefully about it, but the lovely thing about a gallery wall is that you can start with it and then sort of add as you go. Is that one of the ways that most people would say would do a gallery wall?
Yeah, and I think if it's a collection you're growing and building, then you'll start and then you'll grow your gallery wall out. I think if you try and make a gallery wall from scratch, it's going to be quite difficult. But if you're building a gallery wall from a collection you have and you're adding to it, then it's naturally going to evolve, and it's going to kind of be a reflection of you and your taste and things and time. And like you talked about, a mix and match. It could be art, it could be exhibition posters, it could be a plate, it could be framed memorabilia, it could be a photograph, a magazine, and that's what makes the most interesting gallery walls as well. And I think, like you say, I don't think, for me, it's not a trend. It is a trend, but for me it's always going to exist, because it's a way of hanging and a way of showcasing your collection. You know, the home I grew up in, the whole house was a gallery wall, but my parents would never have called it a gallery wall. It's just a reflection of the way that they hang their art and lack of wall space. You're just gonna, the art is everywhere. So, and that's how my home is. And yeah, like in my bedroom, I have, I suppose, what someone else would call a gallery wall, but for me it's just a collection of pieces I love, and I'm just building outwards as I do so to fill that wall.
I think one of my most interesting, one of the pictures in the book is this is a kind of, it's a gallery wall, but it's not like your normal gallery wall. So it starts with this beautiful mirror with an dark ornate wooden frame, and then around it are sort of the owner has hung lots of little hand mirrors, and then but next to them are sort of lithographs there's a lithograph of a whale, and then there's another one of a reindeer, and then there's like feathers and dried seaweed. And I think what's really interesting is that kind of, it's taken the idea of a gallery wall and sort of broadened it even further to sort of put all sorts of things on the wall. And I think that's another big thing that is sort of happening, is that a gallery doesn't need to just be paintings. It can be a whole lot of different things that you can put on the wall that really tell the story, often of your life, or what things that you love. And the kind of the idea of the memory wall, being able to sort of look at a wall and just see kind of the life that you sort of have lived over that time. At the moment I'm trying to put one together that reflects my life, sort of, because I've moved from Sri Lanka to Australia to Britain to France and back to Britain, and my children were born in France, and and I kind of want to have something that kind of reflects the way that we put our life together. And my starting point is that we put a map on the wall just during COVID, because we were homeschooling and we just kind of needed something to help us get through the afternoons, and we did geography. But it kind of, that has given me the idea to sort of create maps and find maps, whether they be old maps or new maps, which kind of have an abstract look to them, all the places that we've been and all the places that we've lived. And into that, I thought I would kind of start to mix in objects that also reflect the places that we've been and we've lived. And I think what is interesting also in the book is that you could see the huge range of things now that people classes art. So one of them is a beautiful dress that is sort of quite placed above a mantelpiece, and that dress obviously really means something to that person and reminds them of something in particular. But you have, I mean, some of the stuff that you have framed, like Tiger Woods Gold Club or something, amazing.
Yeah, there was a charity auction and we framed, in one frame, Tiger Woods Club, Thierry Henry's football boot, and
Roger Federer's
racket.
Tennis racket.
Yeah, and it raised £10,000 for charity, so that was quite amazing. But yeah, we framed so many different things, and it's amazing what people bring in. Dried bouquets, wedding bouquets, seashells, silk scarves are really popular, and they are artworks themselves, and we stretch those out and frame those. Baby boots, drumsticks, tickets from festivals, from gigs, Lego, things, dresses, like you said, kimonos. I think things that mean things to people, that are beautiful and they want to be cherished. And like your example at the beginning, with the book and cutting out the page of the book, there's people bring in a lot of things like that, from magazines, from books, and it's, instead of keeping it and putting it away in a drawer, by framing it, you're going to enjoy it, and then those memories are going to come back to you more often by having it on the wall and being able to see it regularly. So yeah.
Lots you can do. I think finally, before we sort of open the floor out to sort of questions, I thought we would end on a sort of few tips on curating art in your home. So, Erica, what are your three?
Yeah, I mean,
or two.
Yeah, as I said, learn what makes you feel different things, and learn to trust your gut reaction to something, and acknowledge how you feel about things and how you want to feel about things. So how you want to feel about a piece in your bedroom might be very different to how you want to feel about a piece in your lounge. So really examine and think about the way art makes you feel. And I'd say be eclectic in the same way. So just as all your things that you collect and your possessions, they're not one-dimensional. Neither does your art need to be. You can be really eclectic with your art and mix styles in a room, mix styles in your home, and bring those together. Let your art be a reflection of you, your personality, and the things that you love.
And I think following that, I would just say, don't worry about what my one tip would be, don't worry what anyone else thinks. Is just buy something that you have a connection with. It doesn't matter if the person next to you doesn't like it. It just means that they haven't connected with it, or something in it doesn't tell a story to them. Just enjoy, buy what you love, and then and fill your walls around you with things that make you feel happy. I think now, especially since COVID, we really do realise how important the home is to us, and how it makes us feel, and how important it is to sort of have that foundation that we can then sort of gives us the confidence to sort of go and live our lives. So I think art, I think, is a really important and good way of making your home reflect the personality, as Erica said, as you reflect yourself, which I think is great. Does anyone have any questions? Yes.
I'll start things off. Since Murus is an online gallery, just really have any particular tips about buying things online that you haven't seen in person? Are there particular things you need to be aware of? Has anyone ever bought a piece from you, and then when they've seen it in their home, they've thought, I'm not sure how this works? with my decor?
Yeah, I think that was part of how we built Murus, because it's an online platform. We wanted to solve that question, and so our answer on our platform was to have augmented reality. So actually, you can use your phone to view the artwork on your wall at home. So we kind of wanted to tackle that straight on, and we use lifestyle photography to show how things look in people's homes. So, you know, your home isn't a white box. So we photograph our collection in real homes, surrounded by objects and things like that, to really show how it works. So yeah, I think buying online, you do need to really make sure you're taking the time to look at it, to zoom in, to make sure you're looking at the measurements correctly, to measure your wall, to check that it's going to fit, and that type of thing, because obviously you're not seeing it and visualizing it when you're in a gallery. And to your point, have we had returns? No, we've been really lucky actually. So maybe we did do something right with the augmented reality, and yeah, we haven't had returns, which is great.
It's really great. Using technology to
Yeah.
facilitate that.
How do you marry the fact that everyone these days sees art as an investment and something that they will eventually sell on to things that they just love living with?
Yeah, I think I think investment art is definitely a different thing to the kind of art where you love it and you want to live with it. If you're investing in something, then you're making a choice that you're buying it for, to turn it and not to enjoy it and to love it and to treasure it. So I definitely think they're two different markets, and I think the investment market is quite different to the market where people are looking for art for their home that they want to live with and enjoy. And I do think you see the difference between clients like that, and they don't usually overlap a lot of the time.
So do you have two different marketplaces?
So I mean, I don't work in the investment market really, so that is not something that I've got involved in. But I think you do see the difference, and when clients are looking for that, then I will advise them where to go for that, because that's not necessarily the market. There are artists within the collections that I work with, like Sir Peter Blake and Bruce McLean, that are very collectible, but generally with the people that buy those artists are definitely buying those artists because they love their work and it means something to them, not necessarily to resell in the future. So I think there's definitely a difference with that kind of marketplace and the way people are viewing it.
Do you have like a tip about, I suppose, like scaling artwork in a room? Do you think bigger is better if you've got like a big blank wall, or would you say like 3 smaller pieces? Do you have like an idea of tips for that?
Yeah, I think both work really well, and it depends the type of wall. I think if it's a main focal point, then one piece can work really well. So above a sofa or above a dining table, I definitely think that one piece, or maybe a diptych that's one piece split into 2, works incredibly well as a focal point, and it kind of brings it together. I think other longer walls, or walls that maybe aren't the main focal when you walk into a room, work well with like multiple pieces, definitely. I think it also comes down to confidence. So if you're looking to do something and you're building your collection, then one piece is going to be a lot easier starting point for you than putting pieces together. So I think it depends where you are in your art buying journey and how confident you are as well. So
I think the size of the wall, because if you have a really big wall, then you'd have to have quite a large piece of art, and that brings in budgets and all that kind of thing as well. And you also have to think about the framing budget, because quite often a really lovely frame will cost a similar amount, perhaps even more than the sort of the piece that you have. So I think sometimes with a big piece of statement art, you have to kind of take into account what size you need to go for, and then what frame you're going to put it in, and how much, what your budget is, and that kind of thing. So sometimes it might work out would be more cost effective and much more accessible to go for some sort of smaller pieces that you can kind of create a gallery.
yeah. But my advice also would be to not leave something floating in a really big wall. So I think if you choose something that's too small and a big wall, it's going to get really lost. And so maybe if you're going to build a collection if you found a piece you like and you're going to build a collection for a bigger wall, maybe start that smaller piece on a smaller wall and then move it to the bigger wall when you're ready.
Just more of a technical thing, really. Is light damage is something which is quite an issue when you have so many nice pieces on the wall. Do you recommend UV or anything like that specifically, or is there anything else that works specifically?
Yeah, UV glass is really important. So you get different levels of UV protection, and you can go right up to 99% UV protection, which is museum grade. If your home has a lot of sunlight and you're going to have a piece in direct sunlight, then I would definitely encourage UV protection. You also have that combined with low reflection, so you've got low reflective glass and UV glass and both. So low reflective glass means that when you're looking at the piece, you're going to get a lot more clarity. So there's two things. There's preserving the piece, and then there's also enjoying the piece because you've got the clarity of the low reflection and being able to see the detail of the artwork. I would definitely recommend UV on something that you want to keep, and especially if you've got a lot of sunlight in your home.
Can you keep it there for a long period, or would you recommend moving it away to give it a break from the sun? I mean, if you have a really bright sunshine all the time, ultimately, even with all those other things, will it wreck the piece? And so it needs to kind of have a bit of a break from sunshine.
If you have the UV,
Yeah.
if you have the UV, it'll be fine.
It'll be fine.
But if you don't, then I wouldn't keep it in direct sunlight for too long. No.
Any other questions? Okay, well, thank you very much, everybody. Hope that was informative. And if there's more fizz, then do help yourself.